Welcome back to ISO Podcast, the place to go when you're feeling alone. And today I'm with a very special guest, Dr. Froschauer. She's the school psychologist at the Deutsche Schule in Johannesburg. And today we'll just be covering some basic topics, to improve your life and to, I guess, keep yourself really calm and motivated during these tough times of COVID and lockdown. So yeah.
Thank you, Akani. Thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Yes, I'm also very excited because it's the first time I'm having a professional person on the podcast. So I'm very sure it'll be very interesting today.
I hope it will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I went to her office a while back, and the topics we'll be covering today are going to be sleep, exercise, and diet. And towards the end, we also be discussing a few topics that some of my viewers asked for, which is how to deal with sometimes feeling a little bit hopeless and not motivated during these times, and how to keep yourself inspired and trying to do more.
I think those are really relevant topics at this point during lockdown, during COVID, and I'm excited to speak about them.
That's nice. Yes. And what topic would you like to begin with, Dr. Froschauer?
Okay, so I think to start off with, like you said, we had spoken a bit about sleep, diet, exercise, and I think these are really important. And I've added two more since we've spoken, so I'll get to those a bit later. But to start off with, this is like the foundation for healthy living. So if we want to have healthy lifestyles, we need to think about these three aspects. And I'm going to start off with sleep. So Akani, I'm going to ask you, how many hours a night do you sleep?
I'm not actually sure. I'd say normally I go to bed around 10 or 11 and wake up at 9 o'clock or so. So I'm guessing, I'm not even doing the math, I'm guessing that's around 6 to 8 hours on average.
Okay. So that's quite a lot. So if you're waking up at around 9, you're getting about 10 or 11 hours of sleep a night. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what's the ideal for a person your age and with your lifestyle. So for children ages 6 to 12, we want children to be sleeping about 9 to 12 hours. So about how much you're sleeping at the moment. But we know that you aren't in that age range. We know you're a little bit older. So for teenagers who are 13 to 18 years, we recommend that they sleep 8 to 10 hours a night. Okay, so not too much, not too little. Go with a number of 9 to be safe and see how you feel. Do you feel refreshed in the mornings? If you're still feeling tired, you might need more sleep. If you're forcing yourself to sleep too long and can't sleep, you might need less sleep. Sleep is so important because if we haven't had a good night's sleep, our brains aren't functioning the way they should be. We can't recall things. Our memory is not as good. So we sit and we write a test, but we've pulled an all-nighter. It's not ideal because we're not going to remember all of that information that we have studied. So we want to make sure that our brains are rested. We can also process emotions much better once we are rested, once our brains are rested. So to be able to have a difficult conversation with a friend, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, parents, we want to make sure that our brains are well rested so that we can think more clearly about the emotions we're experiencing as well. So our emotional regulation is really benefited through adequate sleep.
And
Yes.
what do you think? Oh, sorry. And what are the negative sides of not getting enough sleep?
Okay.
Um,
Okay, that's a great question. So one thing would be we are more emotional. So we don't have the ability to process information as well. So we become more reactive instead of being responsive. So responding to a situation. But when we haven't had enough sleep, we will react to a situation. We'll fly off the handle. We'll overreact. Then when it comes to, like I mentioned, tests, our performance will be poorer in tests when we haven't slept enough. Also, we'll experience certain physiological changes. So we'll be more peckish, we'll be more hungry. And the interesting thing is, we're in times where we haven't slept enough, we're not going to be reaching for the broccoli or certain vegetables or fruit. We are going to be reaching for high carbohydrate, refined carbohydrate foods. So we're going to be reaching for certain breads and cookies and muffins and sweets, because those are the things that our body craves when we haven't had enough sleep. So it leads to a poor diet as well. We also have less energy, and then we don't perform as well when we do exercise. So those are some of the side effects when we haven't had enough sleep.
Okay, I see it. And then, like you were saying, I guess a big positive. Okay, a big positive side of then getting enough sleep, like you said before, was then that your brain is well rested and that you have more energy and things like that. Are there then any positive benefits of getting enough sleep on just speaking on the body itself? Like maybe not so much mentally, but does it benefit your body in any type of way?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we will be reaching for healthier foods because we don't need unhealthy foods. We feel more energetic. We can climb the stairs at school. We can stay awake during classes, whether it's virtually or in person. We are more attentive. So for our bodies as well, we perform better if we are doing sports. We'll run faster, we'll throw further, we'll swim faster. So all of these things are a benefit of having adequate sleep for what our bodies need. And I would really encourage your listeners and yourself to look at how much sleep you're having. So to think about, am I having enough sleep? And does it fall within that range for my age? So for teenagers, 8 to 10 hours. I definitely wouldn't go less than 8 hours, and I wouldn't recommend going more than 10 hours. So to look at what does my body need, and to stay off devices at least an hour before bed, because those devices, those electronic devices, send out blue light, and that tells our body that it's wake time. So we stay awake instead of letting our bodies get into a resting mode. So no TV, no iPads, no phones before bed. That's what I would recommend, to have restful sleep.
Yeah, that's a very good point that you made. That, and also it's good, I think, that we started with the importance of sleep to building a healthier life. That in particular for us teenagers with social media and things going on like that, I think, late at night it's a lot of downtime, and most of us, I'd say, let me speak for myself, that it's very instinctive almost to be on your phone whilst you're sleeping. When I guess, like you're saying, if you just have the discipline and the willpower enough to stay off it an hour before you go to bed and get enough sleep, I think it builds a good foundation later on to have a decent amount of exercise, a good diet, and just good cognitive abilities and things like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it is so much more challenging for people your age and teenagers. to separate social media from bedtime. So I would almost put in a rule that by a certain time, the phone goes onto flight mode and it gets put away. So that even when you wake up in the middle of the night, it's not the first thing you're checking, because that again tells your body, oh, it's wake up time when you look at that light. And then it's hard to get back to sleep. So give your body a good chance to rest.
I understand. Yeah. I think I was watching one of I think he's the world heavyweight boxing champion, Tyson Fury, and he was struggling with depression and all those things like that, and he said that the key thing to getting his life back on track was sleeping well, eating right, and exercise. And I guess this is leading me on to the next question that I have for you. I think most people struggle a little bit with being disciplined when it comes to exercising, knowing what foods to eat and what foods not to eat. And actually, I think more importantly, knowing what volumes to eat, because I do believe that, okay, for me personally, I always think that, if I exercise, that I'll have to eat a little bit more, and if I don't exercise, a little bit less, and things like that. So could you maybe please clarify, of course it varies from person to person, but could you please maybe clarify the ideal amount of exercise and, the ideal amount that you should be eating whilst one is exercising?
Great points you raised there. So let's start with the diet. So I think that's the next building block after sleep. So to try and ensure that you are eating regular meals, I think for most of us, 3 meals a day is sufficient. Some of us might need some snacks in between, but listen to your body. And when you're eating, make sure that those are healthy snacks. So sour worms and chocolate and biscuits are not healthy snacks. And those are also not healthy meals. Those are not things that we can use as meal replacements. So we all know what healthy food is. We know that nuts and seeds are healthy if we don't have an allergy to them. We know that vegetables and fruits is healthy. We know that beans are healthy. So think of incorporating all of those things into your diet. Why is it so important to eat so healthily? So one of the things you mentioned was this professional, you said heavyweight.
Yeah, heavyweight boxer, yeah, Tyson Fury, yes.
Okay, heavyweight boxer. One of the important things for him was eating properly, because when we don't eat properly, it can lead to slumps in our blood sugar, and that can often feel like depression. And it's quite interesting because I will often see people who tell me, oh, I feel so depressed every afternoon. And we know that's not how depression works. Depression lingers for longer. It won't just hang around for an afternoon and then return the next afternoon. So that's telling me that there's a slump in blood sugar levels. So something about the lunchtime food is maybe not working. So maybe there are too many carbohydrates, maybe there's not enough protein, maybe there's not enough healthy fat. So we want to make sure that the diet is balanced and that it's giving you enough energy to be sustained, to maintain your concentration, to maintain your energy, your mental alertness, physical alertness throughout the day.
That's such a good point that you made, because I was experimenting a little bit with varied diets of, I think people's core diets are, veggies, meat, and starch. And like what I find was weird is how I didn't completely take meat out of my diet, but I started eating less of it and more greens, and that gave me surprisingly more energy, which I didn't think was possible, because I always thought of meat as an energy source, something that was going to give you an extra go, when I was surprised to find that it's actually the greens that give that. So yeah, I think you made such a very good point that it should definitely be balanced and not leaning on too much of one side. Yeah.
We have something called bio-individuality. So that means we are all unique. So it might work for you eating less meat or even no meat, but for someone else, it might be absolutely essential to maintain the energy. So I think it's wonderful that you've been experimenting with it and finding out what works for you. So as an example, I don't do well with a lot of carbohydrates. And that is something that might work with you. So if I'm eating certain things like white bread, or if I'm eating biscuits and muffins and things like that, I get a lot of energy in that moment, but an hour later, my energy completely drops. Absolutely. And then I feel much worse than when I started with. So for me, those are foods that I try and stay away from, because I know I don't feel good. And then I have feelings of like, oh, am I depressed? And meanwhile, it's just an unhealthy diet. So something that's also important for our mind health, for our brain health, is to bring in healthy fats, because our brains consist of mainly fats. So we want to bring in healthy fats. So that means avocados, olives, cooking with olive oil, things like coconut oil, nuts and seeds. And they say walnuts are especially healthy for the brain. And what was the last one? Oh, fish, yes. So bringing in oily fish. So things like salmon. Salmon can very often be quite expensive. So we can also go for less expensive alternatives like sardines or pilchards. So to bring in all those different fats into meals, and the fats will also, adding a bit of that to each meal can also keep us full for longer, so we don't have that desire to snack all the time. So that's something to keep in mind. But listen to yourself. So especially if you are having less meat now, try and bring in legumes and beans and more like vegan sources of protein into your diet to make sure that when you are exercising, you're still building muscle.
Oh, all right. Okay. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, so I guess so far you've covered very important, or at least the first two important elements of Tyson Fury's building blocks for a healthier life, which is getting enough rest, enough sleep, and eating well. And I think I'd like to then move on to then the value of exercise. And how much do you think, I'd say ranging from my age, which is, teenager, late teens, to someone who's of the age of like 30, how many times and for how long should one ideally be exercising per week?
Okay. So some of the guidelines are suggesting 150 minutes of cardio a week. So if you think about it, that could be 50 minutes 3 times a week. And so almost an hour. That could be running, it could be swimming, it could be playing soccer, it could be dancing. Cardio is anything that gets your heart beating fast. So those are some of the recommendations. So what I really like cardio because I think it can shift our mood very quickly. And people who are struggling with a low mood or who are feeling depressed, I would really encourage people like that to get exercise, to get their hearts pumping. And what I would recommend is alternating, doing some strength training with some cardio. And I would say every day, we can exercise every day, and we spend so much time sitting. And I think now, especially when we're sitting behind our screens, and the most we're walking is from our screens to our fridge and back again. It's not a lot of exercise that we're getting. So when we're at school, at least we've got stairs, we're going to different classes, we participate in the sports lessons. But now while we're at home, it's really important that we schedule that in and to think about what works. For me, it works to exercise in the morning. So it means I have to get up a bit earlier to go for a run. If running is not your thing, then find something that you enjoy. If you say, I don't live in a neighborhood where it's safe to go running, get a skipping rope. We don't need a lot of space to skip. And get a skipping rope, skip for 5 minutes, and you will feel your heart pumping. Do stretches, do sit-ups, do push-ups. If you've got a lot of upper body strength, do pull-ups. Do yoga. There are so many different options of sports to do. And before we move on, Akani, I want to know from you, what kind of sports do you do?
Well, there's no sports now because of lockdown and things like that. So you're not allowed to, sports is very interactive sport. But back when I was playing, it was mainly basketball. That was the main thing. And I think when I was like much younger, football, and also last year, athletics. Because like athletics is, it's not just like a ball sport or something like that. Like it's like with the purpose of properly getting your body in tune and things like that. So yeah, those are the things that I was doing. Yeah.
Wonderful.
But I think also, I think one thing that I was struggling a little bit with the beginning in terms of exercise, which I think most people struggle with, is the amount to do in the sense of maybe not necessarily how many reps you're doing or things like that, but I have a feeling that most people like to go a long period of time without exercising, and then when they do, then they like kill themselves, to get that feeling of being relaxed and okay, when now at least I'm trying to get into the habit of just believing that the 1% work, that it's actually more beneficial to, I don't know, do either 10 push-ups or 10 sit-ups every morning till the day you die, as opposed to going 3 weeks without exercise and then banging in an hour session of just running, skipping and everything, because that doesn't seem ideal.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. So rather to have a regular balanced schedule rather than going extreme, and going extreme can often lead to injuries. So we need to, and we build up. We start slow, we start with a few reps, and then we build up. We start with 5 minutes of running, then we build up to 10. We're not going to run an hour from not running for months. So let's be patient with ourselves as well. I have to tell you a funny story here. So usually I run about 3 times a week, and I aim to do 5 kilometers at each run. And then on my alternating days, I do some strength training, and especially for my back, because I sit a lot. So I often get back pain. And in my work with the therapy, I'm sitting most of the day. So I need to make sure that I'm always exercising and strengthening my back. And then the other day I had this idea, is like, I'm going to run 10 kilometers and I'm going to do this. And so that's what I did. And it was lovely. And I felt like a champ. But then like 2 hours later, my legs were shaky and I felt completely broken. So I knew I had pushed myself too far. And it was a good lesson for me to rather build up to 6 kilometers for 2 weeks. And then 7 kilometers, and to alternate that as well.
Yeah, like you're saying, I think it's so difficult because the mind is a very powerful thing, and like you're saying, when you've been running 5 and you set your mind to do 10, you will do 10, but then the question is, can you do those 10 as consistently and as effortless? I wouldn't say effortlessly because exercise isn't like that easy, but but like, yeah, like you're saying that, it's okay to set your goal at 10 kilometers, but, I think the true key is then to be building it up of, from 5 to 6 or from 5 to 5.5 and just, yeah, that like, how do you say, it makes your life revolve around exercise as opposed to just a quick rush, you know what I mean? Yeah.
That's it. And we make it more sustainable in that way. One last thing that I want to add with exercise is that when we exercise, our bodies release what they call happy hormones. So these are endorphins. And dopamine as well. Dopamine, endorphins, and this helps us feel happier. So if you think about, often before I exercise, I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do this, but I know it's good for me, so I'm going to do
it. The worst part of exercise is before. Yeah,
exactly. And then you finish and you're like, oh wow, I feel so good. So, and that's the release of those chemicals in our brain, and it's really, really good, especially now during lockdown, now during COVID, to help us feel better. So yeah, there's actually a scientific reason why we should be exercising.
Yes, no, for sure. Well, that's, yeah, you just said it all then. That's perfect. I think you've come and really laid down the real basics for everyone who's looking to have a little bit more of a healthy life, which is just to sleep well, have a good diet, and to exercise often. So those are Dr. Froschauer's 3 keys to a more healthy life. And I think also one thing I'd like to say for all of the kids still in DSJ, that Dr. Froschauer actually exists and that she's actually a school psychologist and that she can help you with finding the career that's best for you, which I did last year. But, you take a test and you just find what's good for you and, what's not, which is why I guess I'm also doing this, because I scored high on vocabulary and comprehension and speaking and things like that. So, yeah, please, visit our office, ask her about things, because for me personally, the only time I actually knew that it existed was when you were preparing us for grade 12 and give us that presentation. And I was like, wow, it was kind of like, I was shocked that, the school didn't tell us about you anytime sooner. So.
Okay, that's good to know. And Akani, just 2 more things I wanted to add on top of those foundations are that relationships are so important, that we need to connect with friends and family. We need to encourage healthy relationships and to get support from those people around us. And the last thing I wanted to add is that our attitudes and our minds are really important. So if we can
100%.
encourage positive thinking, if we can count our blessings every day, if we can be grateful, if we can strengthen those neural pathways. So we've got pathways in our brain. The more we think about something, the more we strengthen those pathways. If we can encourage positive thinking instead of negative thinking, we are well on our way to coping with all the challenges of lockdown, coping with the stresses we experience as teenagers, as children, as adults. So yeah, that's something I would really want us to keep in mind, to really think about the positive things instead of always focusing on the negatives, which we can very easily do.
I totally agree with you that although you've discussed that, you do need to have good rest, good diet, exercise, and keep relations up. In my opinion, the mind is everything. That I just advise all my listeners, and you and myself too, to constantly listen more to the positive voice within yourself, because then I think when you listen to that voice, you just become happier. You just I just feel like you just feel better. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, so true. And Akani, I also just want to thank you for the work that you're doing. I think this is such meaningful work and such inspiring and positive work. So the people who are listening, I imagine they are listening and getting a lot from this. So thank you so much for what you are contributing to our world.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think I'd like to then end it here. That it's been another episode of this podcast, the place to go when you're feeling alone. As I said before, with my special guest, Dr. Froschauer, you can go to her office anytime, or actually not anytime, because I think things are like locked down now. You can contact her at any time on an email, on Teams, anything like that. And who knows? I might, when I get older, do another one with her again.
Excellent. Thanks, Akani.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll see you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.